Greetings and welcome to the Picks podcast for UFC 303. As always, I'm your host, Luca Fury, joined by Liam Heslin, and we're going to be breaking down this card, which has had obviously some shakeup so far, but ended up still being a pretty good card top to bottom. We're a little bit short on time, only have about 25 minutes to go here, so want to jump right into things real quick. First, though, do want to remind you guys, of course, if you're not tailing the official bets, make sure you do that. We have been on quite a heater, of course. It is all third-party tracked and verified. We are now up 61.83 units on the year, 347.52 units lifetime. And yes, it is a premium service. There's a $49 fee per month. However, as long as you're betting at least $5 per unit, you would have made back the membership cost so far this year, and you can still profit beyond that. So I assume you're betting more than $5 a unit, and if so, sign up for the service, make some money this weekend. We also have a bunch of other bets as well for non-UFC cards, such as Invicta and PFL today as well. So with that aside, let's get right into it, starting first with the main event, a rematch between Alex Pereira against Jiri Prochazka. Betting odds here have Jiri as the underdog this time around. It was about a pick 'em last time around, but he is a decided underdog, but a small one, about minus 150 out there for Alex, plus 130 for the comeback on Jiri. Start first with you, Liam. Do you see this one going any different than the first time?
Luca, they say the definition of insanity is, watching something and then expecting a different result, right? Well, call me insane because I thought Jiri was going to win the last fight and he lost. And I still think he's going to win this fight. And I could be, just wrong, right? I could just be flat wrong about the dynamics of this matchup. But as far as I'm concerned, I thought that we saw a pretty solid performance from Jiri in the first fight. I think that what he did wrong was he gave a little bit too much respect to Alex, especially early on. The problem is, right, if you don't respect Alex, you could go to sleep like Sean Strickland. But if you do respect Alex, then you don't really give yourself much of a chance to win. I think that Israel Adesanya had an interesting strategy. He kind of took some abuse, drew Alex in, and then got a free opening and just killed him, right? And I think that when you look at Jiri, his ability to take damage and then come back in fights has been a calling card throughout his career, not only in Ryzen, but also in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He's been knocked out in most of the fights that he's won. And I think that that is a problem, right? It's something that's worrisome. However, when you look at his age, he's 31 years of age, and he's had a lot of professional experience. He showed in the last fight, he understands he might have to mix up the phases in the fight, take the guy to the ground, get on top of him, make him work a little bit. And I think that we just know that Jiri Prochazka has 5 rounds of hell in him. When he fought Glover Teixeira, he showed that, right? He's willing to go to hell and back to beat anybody. He showed that in his most recent contest as well. And so the question just becomes, can Alex Pereira replicate his same result and knock this guy out? Or will he eventually succumb to the pressure of Jiri Prochazka? Because I do believe Jiri Prochazka brings an insane pace and pressure that most people are not equipped to deal with. And so you would ask, all right, who's a better grappler on paper? Glover Teixeira or Jiri Prochazka? It's not a hard question, right? It's very easy, Glover Teixeira. But who won the fight via submission? It was the younger man who was able to go for longer, who was able to stick it out when the going got tough, and eventually he found a finish. And I think that the same thing could happen in this fight if Jiri is not killed early. He got killed early last time. Hey, it could happen again. Poatan is that guy. He killed Jamal Hill last time out, but he got Jamal Hill off an ACL surgery, off the couch, a guy who's going to go out there and strike with you. And Jiri will strike with you, but he can mix it up. He's shown that regionally. He's shown that in the UFC. One of his 4 UFC wins is via submission. So it's just like, this guy is willing to go out there and mix it up in all positions. He's defended multiple submissions as well in the UFC. So he's constantly putting himself in these grappling positions. Pereira has been working on that. He's been trying to improve that, but he's also been doing press tours around the world and all these other things. As a 36 going on 37-year-old champion, it's a lot to ask. So for me, the dog money on Jiri is where I would go if I bet on this fight. Otherwise, I'm going to pass. I think that odds makers are tempting people to bet on Alex here, personally, just because everybody I know is like, how would he not win? It's the rematch, and it's just like, but he's minus 120. He's minus 140. A lot of people are putting money behind that opinion. And the odds makers are kind of just sitting there like, all right, we'll take that money and we'll take that risk and, let's figure it out. And for me, I always want to side with the odds makers if I can. And I think that they're probably going to need Jiri Prochazka come Saturday night. And I think he could win the fight. He's 31 years of age. The much younger guy mixed up the fight better last time, got takedowns, outlanded him and won the first round. I think it's a competitive fight. I think Alex is a great fighter, but I basically only look to fade 36-year-old champions as a rule. So, yeah, I would look at the dog or pass on this fight personally, and I have no bets in the fight, from a money line standpoint.
So I picked Yuri the first time. I am going to go the other side this time for a couple of reasons. So a bit of a disagreement here to start out. It's always fun. My reasoning the first time around was kind of what you alluded to, the fact that we know Yuri has the crazy cardio and pace, and over the course of especially a 5 rounder, he's going to land more volume than Alex. And if it goes to decision, unless he's just getting rocked all over the place, he's most likely to win on the scorecards. He's more likely of any of them to rally down the stretch. He's more likely of the two of them to get takedowns and potentially get on top in some fashion and use his grappling. So for a variety of reasons, that's why I ended up going with Yuri. But originally, my initial lean on the fight was actually going with Alex, and that was because, well, you can actually break it down in super simple terms if you want. I don't think you should actually, use this as your real analysis, but it is kind of a fight where you can look at it in a sort of a surface level way, which is we have Yuri, who has some of the absolutely most atrocious defense of any elite level fighter you'll ever see. And it's not because he doesn't know how to defend, it's that he refuses to. He just doesn't respect his opponents. He doesn't really try to defend strikes. He walks in with his hands down, chin up. You'll see him get rocked. And then, other fighters, they get rocked. And then, maybe they take a step back. Maybe they shell up, put their guard up. No, he just keeps pressing forward as if nothing happens, even if he's on wobbly legs. So that's a very big concern against anybody. But now he's going against someone who has one of the best one-hitter quitter power in the UFC. Also, some of the best counters, some of the best tactical abilities on the feet as well. I mean, wouldn't that most likely lead to that fighter catching the other one who's very reckless? And that's what we ended up seeing the first time. So that was why my initial lean was on Alex the first time, but then I talked myself into going with Yuri. That said, you did still see some of the things that I thought that would lead Yuri to victory play out in the first fight, and that is why I'm not super confident in Alex this time around either. The first time around, there were several moments where that chaos from Yuri was getting to Alex. He, again, is very tactical. He's very good at reading what his opponents are doing. Not against Yuri. He was actually very confused at times. Yuri was slipping through the guard, had him backed up, pedaling against the cage. There were some real issues there. So if Alex doesn't catch him like that, I don't think Alex wins the fight. I think he has to catch him in the first half of the fight in order to win. It's something I said in the first time around, too. It's possible he could catch him in the second half. Obviously, he did that against Israel. But in terms of weighting the likelihood, significantly more likely that it would be around the first half of the fight. So it's either Alex probably KO in the first half, or he gets outpaced, outvolumed, or even knocked out himself. So ultimately, I feel like I probably should have gone with my initial lean. I mean, not just being results-based, because obviously, the initial lean was right last time, but even after, just considering the fight more, it's not just, oh, well, Alex won, so automatically I switched the pick. There's lots of times we'll get on the podcast and be like, hey, this guy won the fight, but I don't actually think he's really the better fighter. There were certain circumstances. That's not my feeling in this one. So I am switching the pick. It is even kind of tempting, actually, for me from a betting perspective. I don't like minus 150, though. I'd want more like minus 135. So we'll see where the line goes, but I think it's probably going to be a knockout once again for Alex here. But again, don't be surprised either if there is that chaos from Yuri that gets to him. And it is worth noting about Yuri, I don't think he's a particularly intelligent tactical fighter. There's a variety of reasons for that. I mean, the dude's out there ripping his toenails off in the middle of the woods and stuff. So don't get me wrong, super entertaining. I think he's one of the most entertaining fighters out there right now. But do you think he's going to go out there with a John Jones systematic breakdown of a game plan and just absolutely pick apart his opponent from a fundamental core level? No, that's not what he does. He goes out there with his, again, hands down, chin up in the air. And he's even said in interviews, I don't really think I did anything wrong. I think I was on my way to winning the fight. Why would I adjust? So if he thinks it ain't broke, don't fix it. He's just going to do the exact same thing. Probably going to get caught again. So I lean towards Alex this time. Again, not super confident. Want to make that clear, but I do favor him this time around. I do think he's going to get the job by knockout, probably first or second round yet again. Remember, though, if you do want our official bets, head over to the link you see below there on the screen, patreon.com/Fury's Fight Picks. Again, over 60 units of profit this year alone, over 300 units long term, several years of third-party tracked results between the multiple handicappers, so there can be no denying those results. As for the co-main event, we do have, again, actually some other good fights here. It's not a one-hit wonder type of pay-per-view, which it kind of originally was going to be. In the co-main event, we have Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopez. Lopez minus 135, Ortega plus 115.
Yeah, this is a weird fight. It got weirder with the weight, right? Like all of a sudden, Brian Ortega at 3:30 in the morning gives a call. Hey, I can't make the weight, and I don't like that. Just straight up, I'm just gonna level with you guys. I find that to be a little bit fugazi, right? The way that it happened. If you can't make the weight, you can't make the weight, right? I don't want anybody to die. I don't want anybody to risk their health. But when your opponent cuts the weight and you don't cut the weight, that's cheating. Like I don't know another way to describe that, right? When we're all trying to show up feeling our best for this contest and you let the other guy get down to 146 and then you are 151 and a hook and saying, yeah, we're not doing 150. We're, 155, take it or leave it. That's what A sides can do in the fight business, but it's kind of a scumbag move and I didn't like to see it. Now, as far as the fight goes, I can't shake the feeling that Diego Lopes is going to win this fight and win it via knockout. I was on Brian Ortega last time that he fought in the UFC. I respect Brian Ortega. I think he's a great fighter. He's not above anything, right? We know that he's popped, I believe, in the past as well. So, Brian Ortega is a guy that is very skilled. He's skilled in all positions, but in terms of the damage he takes on the feet, I mean, he's taken 2 life-altering beatings inside the UFC's octagon, and he was well on his way to another one against Yair Rodriguez, but Yair has very little takedown defense, and, he's kind of a fish off of his back. What he has is good submission offense. Beyond that, his jiu-jitsu is not very fundamental. It's not very deep. So you start passing his guard, he starts making a ton of mistakes. I think that when you look at a guy like Diego Lopes, he's not going to be troubled, in my opinion, by the jiu-jitsu. I think that could Ortega catch an opportunistic sub? Yeah, on anybody in the division. He's that kind of guy. But if these guys are just grappling, sequence for sequence, I feel like Diego Lopes has a little bit more of a modern game in terms of his ability to attack legs and some things like that. And the problem I have with Ortega at this stage of his career is last time out, I bet him and I thought he was a great pick. And I thought he was a great selection, right? But the thing that scared me is before the fight even takes place, Luke, he jumps up in the air, he rolls his ankle on national television. And I was like, is he going to even be able to fight? Like, are they going to wave this off before the match gets underway? The guy's body's just been falling apart on him. That's why he can't make weight, in my humble opinion. That's why he's moving up to 155 pounds. That's why he's rolling his ankle in the pre-fight warm-up. And that's also why the guy has had so few fights. He's only had 4 fights since he lost to Max Holloway in the UFC. And it's not a guy that doesn't like to compete or something like that. I just think that he's been broken down by the sport of fighting over the course of his life. And I feel like you're looking at a guy in Diego Lopes who's a Terminator, built for this right now, hasn't been stopped with strikes since 2018. And I'm looking at a guy that is on all the juice that I could see, right? The cutting of the weight is the thing that keeps me off of playing him here at Chalk. But if this line was flipped, I'd be on Diego Lopes at an underdog price. I do think he's going to win this fight via knockout in the first round. That's a gut feeling. But I thought Yair almost did that last time. And honestly, Yair just doesn't have the same well-rounded game that Diego Lopes does. He's a killer on the feet. He's dangerous. But I think Diego Lopes' boxing is crisp. And I think he can knock out Brian Ortega. I think he can hurt him in this fight. And, I think that the weight shenanigans have kept me off being more confident here. But I like Diego Lopes to win this one.
I also like Diego. It's interesting. They're, in a way, sort of mirror images of each other in the sense that Brian Ortega, throughout his entire career, has never been a great kind of meat and potatoes fighter. He's always had great submissions and powerful strikes at times, like knocking out, Thiago Tavares and stuff back in the day, even though he wasn't a fluid striker. Now, he certainly improved his striking a lot, especially after the Holloway performance, but he's still not like an elite level striker. He's still not a great wrestler. He's an underrated wrestler actually at times, but not an elite level wrestler certainly. And then in terms of his overall grappling, he's good with the submissions, but you don't see him usually go out there, take a guy down, get in their half guard, pass to mount. We're now 3 minutes into the round. It's been suffocating top control. Now he's in full mount, back mount. You don't really see that from him, at least not too often. Sometimes, sure, but not consistently. So what I see with Lopez is kind of a similar thing. He does go out there and he has some dynamic striking. He has power. His striking is certainly not bad, but it's not elite level. His overall wrestling, same thing. He goes out there, gets takedowns, but he's not an elite level wrestler. His submission game, same deal. He's very opportunistic with it, but we've also seen him on his back and stuff like that. So in a way, they're similar fighters in that sense. The reason why I like Diego, though, is Brian Ortega has just never been a guy who's good at winning minute-to-minute, round-to-round of fights. Even when he wins rounds of fights, it's like he lost for 3 minutes and then randomly got their back in the last 90 seconds or something. Like, he's just always been a poor round winner. Whereas Diego, well, again, he is kind of an opportunistic, dynamic finisher himself as well. He has shown to be better minute-to-minute and round-to-round. So if we have a situation here where I don't think they're probably going to submit each other, a knockout, I guess, is possible, but I feel like they're probably not going to actually knock each other out either. I think this could be actually a competitive, kind of scrambly, all over the place MMA fight that could go the distance. And in that case, again, who's the better minute-to-minute, round-to-round winner who's not the guy who just solely has to rely on dynamic finishes to win? That is Diego Lopez. So I think it's probably going to be a competitive fight. Like you mentioned, it'd be nice if the line was a little bit different. I'm not rushing to the window to bet Diego here, but who knows where the line will move. We'll see where things go. But in terms of a pure pick, in terms of who I think has at least a 51% chance to win, I would go with Diego for that reason. But again, I hate always having to put this asterisk, but whenever you have a fight that you expect to go to a competitive decision, especially when it involves scrambly grappling where it's not going to be like clear dominant top control, Jesus Christ, you have to be worried about the three blind mice at cage side. So again, something to worry about with all fights, but especially a dynamic like this. It's something I see people overlook all the time, is that there are certain fights, even striking matchups, that just have the dynamic that it's going to be hard for the judges to parse truly who's dominant. And you're just asking for trouble if you're laying any kind of juice or not even like a great pick'em type or underdog price on the line. So again, Diego Lopez will be my pick, but not particularly confident in it. Next two fights on the card, not exactly stellar stuff. So there are some very good ones to get to. So we'll kind of slightly gloss over the next two. Real quickly, Liam, do you want to give your thoughts on Mayra Bueno Silva against Macy Chiasson and also Anthony Smith against Roman Dolidze?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do so. And I'll be brief on both these. If you guys notice, when I have strong conviction, I'll let you know that, right? I'm not saying Yuri Prohaska, lock of the century. I'm telling you, I think he's a live underdog. When you look at the co-main event, I'm not saying I think Diego Lopez is a slam spot. I think he's the deserved favorite, based on the context. But when you look at, these two matchups, I don't have the strongest thoughts, but here's what I'll say. First and foremost, you've got a Anthony Smith who's an underdog in his own weight class. That's kind of weird, right? Like it just stands out as being a little bit odd. But everybody was ready to write his death warrant just one fight ago against Vitor Petrino. I said, Anthony Smith is better at everything in MMA. He's just washed. And he went out there and beat Vitor Petrino, who was a walking fade, right? He was going to get faded in the next couple of fights, whether it was Anthony Smith or somebody else. He had a lot of athletic potential, but he didn't have the skills to pay the bills. And ultimately, a lot of times skills win fights. So looking at this fight in terms of skills, I don't think people give Roman Dolidze any credit for the skills he does have. He could be a very dangerous finisher at times, whether that's the knees from the clinch that shut off Dawkins, whether that's the ability to literally destroy Phil Hawes' knee with a leg lock inside the octagon, or whether it's the ability to sweep Jack Hermanson into a face down TKO, from one of the most unique finishing sequences you'll ever see in the UFC. And that's saying something, but truly, guys, go back and rewatch it. It's not common to see somebody get like bellied out like that with a wrist controlled and getting beat up with their leg tied behind their back. This guy can really grapple. And so I think Anthony Smith gets a lot of credit for his grappling because he's in a division that's not very good at grappling. And I do think that Roman Dolidze, the reason he might be favored is he actually might be a better pure grappler than Anthony Smith. That is my hot take of the week based on everything I've heard from people. Everybody seems to respect Anthony's ground game. I do too, but not as much as Dolidze, in my view. Dolidze has competed at ADCC trials and these kind of things. He's done very well in those contests. He's also very physically strong. So for me, the problem is just if this fight goes the distance, I think it's a Smith fight. So those are the ways I look to play it. It's like almost the prop side on either guy because I just don't think of Anthony Smith as a very dangerous guy at this point in his career. I know he submitted Vitor Petrino, but again, I think Vitor Petrino just, made a lot of amateurish mistakes in that fight, from getting beat up at distance and panicking to taking a shot from half a mile away, ducking his head in and lifting on a slam that he literally didn't need to do, right? Like you could have pushed away at the hips, fight the hands. Instead, he's like, I'll slam myself deeper into it. It was not a good look. So I think that in this fight, we're going to see a much more competent grappler, let's say in Dolidze, but he isn't the physical hoss that Petrino is. He's 35 years of age, just like Smith. He has less MMA miles. I'd make him a slight favorite, not as aggressive as the odds makers have. As for the other fight, Mayra Bueno Silva, she laid an egg last time. I thought she was going to win. I bet her against Holly Holm. I thought she looked great in that fight. And then she just looked terrible against Raquel Pennington. Had some moments early and just fell off a cliff in terms of cardio. I think Macy Chiasson is a gasser. I think she's kind of fraudulent in her own right. Her two best wins in the UFC are submitting Pannie Kianzad like 10 years apart. I'm half kidding, but just like she hasn't really shown me all that much development. She still makes a lot of basic mistakes in her fights. So she's dangerous in some ways. She's a big woman. She can get on top of people, but I think Mayra Bueno Silva more technical, actually standing and on the ground. So just a little bit more dangerous in those positions. I think she's probably going to find a finish at some point, even if she's losing the fight. It's kind of been the hallmark of Chiasson's career, I feel, is that when she's off to a great start, she just finds a way to F it up somewhere along the way, right? And we've seen that a number of times. Irene Aldana, as good as done, kicks her from the ground and she goes down like it was sniper fire. So I can't trust the woman.
Yeah,
Certainly not a chalk. I was surprised by the move. I don't know about you, but
I mean, for women's MMA, I'm so careful about betting it. Period. I try to basically avoid betting chalk on it of any kind, unless it's someone like Amanda Nunes or something. I mean, even then, I'd usually bet like a prop because she was finishing people. But in terms of the Smith and Delice fight, yeah, like we talked about the last fight. I mean, we were looking to fade his opponent there. Unfortunately, did not fade him with that fight, so missed the boat there. But Anthony Smith, I've said before, I don't think he's necessarily washed. I just don't think he was ever that good. Obviously, he does have some skills in MMA, but there's a reason why you're still seeing him as an underdog here, despite the fact that he just had that huge upset as a 6-1 dog. The thing is, he's just not a consistent fighter. He's very vulnerable to being finished. Up until recently, almost every single one of his fights would go to a finish, whether it was a win or a loss. So Roman, he is a better knockout artist. He's a better submission artist. I think that at some point he probably catches Smith, who's going to be in some sort of vulnerable position. And while Smith doesn't have an issue with heart in terms of quitting, he's not good at rallying usually. He'll stay in the fight and survive. Didn't take the DQ against Jones, for example, but he doesn't usually rally when he's down. Once he starts losing, he just kind of keeps losing and usually loses worse. In the case of the female fight, like I said, I try to be very careful about betting on women's MMA. Bueno Silva, I mean, as you mentioned, if she doesn't lay an egg like she just recently did, I do think probably should be more technical all around, and that should show. She's also going to get someone who, again, as you mentioned, finds ways to lose. So even if it's like, okay, well, it's going well for her, for Macy, that is, after a couple of rounds, finds a way to lose in round 3, gets rear naked choked. Won't be surprised at all. So when you're talking about already inconsistent fighters and you have one who's inconsistent even compared to those other inconsistent fighters, I'm usually going to go with the other fighter, in which case that is Silva here. So not confident there, certainly not looking to bet it, but she will be my prediction. As for the last fight here of the main card, I'll let you break it down first here and then get out of here, Liam, because I know you are short on time, and then I can go a little bit longer with my breakdown. Don't have to rush through it. We do have Michael Page taking on Ian Gary. As for the odds here, I know they're close here. Want to get the exact ones. Minus 155 now for Ian Machado Gary. I usually refuse to say that ridiculous second last name that he's tacked on. But as for his opponent, Michael Page, plus 130.
Yeah, I'm going to disclose my biases up front. If y'all can't tell by my complexion, I'm Irish as shit, okay? And the other thing to keep in mind here is I've made money betting on Ian Gary throughout the years in terms of just, a lot of people want to fade the guy. They bet a lot of different people against him. It hasn't worked out yet, right? So if you're system fading Ian Gary, if you're waiting on the time, hey, this is as good a chance as any, right? Michael Venom Page, weird style, dangerous striker, power in his hands, can go out there and convert weird finishes. He kicked the guy in the knee and shattered his knee one time. The guy just has unique finishing abilities, right? But outside of that, I do think that there are some exploitable tendencies that he has. I think there's a reason he had a very manicured career. Not to say that he didn't fight tough guys. He did, but he was very selective about it. And he picked the fights very carefully. And the losses that he has on his record, are some indication of the level of guy that can beat him. But also you look at the fact that there's been a couple really close split decisions, things like that went his way throughout the course of his career. He's had a little bit of good fortune. And at 37 years of age, I don't know that he's going to fight for UFC titles. I don't know if that's really on the horizon for him. I think instead he's a big name. He's a guy that you could put on pay-per-view. He'll be in fun fights. He'll go out there and put on a scrap. Not afraid to go out there and look for those opportunities. But when I see Ian Gary on the other side, I see him as a future title challenger. I see him as a guy that is going to compete in this welterweight top 10. And he's a very careful fighter at times. I think that careful nature will serve him well in this fight. A lot of guys want to take unnecessary risks. They're about ego. They're about bravado, right? Almost to a comical extent, right? This guy is not always about ego. That's why it's Ian Machado, Gary, right? He's bringing the wife into the fold, but this guy is a very good fighter, right? And he's not afraid to let people know that. And the thing about confident guys that have success is people want to see them fail, right? It's that is a long-standing, human quality. We love to pretend we want to see success for others, but the truth is, and Chael Sonnen talks about this psychology, fans want to see really successful people lose, right? That is eventually the psychology. Think of Floyd Mayweather. He had some scumbag qualities, right? But also it's the fact that he keeps winning and he keeps rubbing it in my face. Not only do I hate him, he's good. It sucks. And it's for me, that is the Ian Gary reality, is that a lot of people hate him and a lot of people don't want to see him succeed, but he's good at fighting. And I think that the fact he's gone all around the world, taken on the best training that he possibly could at all times, a lot of places have kicked him out. Why? He's trying to get better than their best guy. He's trying to take everything they worked for, right? This guy, what's his name? Leon Edwards, right? He's like, dude, I see the writing on the wall. We might have to do this one day. Get the hell out of here. Pack your stuff and go with them cameras, right? That the UFC is probably sending, like, yo, let's catch a moment between these guys. Let's find a way to build this one even bigger. And if I was going to be trying to book his career, right, I would say, what's a bigger, setup fight for you? We get you in there with some random guy in the top 7, or we get you in there with another guy from the same gym that you could go out there and potentially beat. And if you beat him, you call out the champ. And now you're in line. And now Colby Covington missed the boat. Thanks for playing, buddy. See ya. Back of the line. And I think that that's the way that this is turning out, right? They basically tried to get that fight booked, didn't go anywhere. Okay, this guy MVP needs to say yes to fights. He's 37. He needs to go right now. So we're going to give him a fight where, hey, Ian, use all that grappling you've been working on with Charles, right? Use that grappling that you used to show in Cage Warriors that you've kind of just kept in your back pocket since you got to the UFC. Don't go out there with the karate guy and stand on the feet for longer than you need to. Kick him in the legs, punt the shit out of him. And this guy has been kicked off his feet in innumerable fights, guys. He keeps like a very wide base. So you don't need to be Johnny Wrestler to take down MVP. Kevin Holland took him down by kicking him. He fell. He followed him. Back take, slam, and then he's in a dominant position. By the way, nearly secured a rear naked choke, was credited with a submission attempt in that fight. Kevin Holland's a good grappler, but he ain't a good wrestler. That's been the burden of his career, is that he gets taken down by anybody who wants to do it, and then he's able to take him down. He's able to get his offense going. And by the way, he's a bonehead, okay? So every time he's ever had an opportunity to grapple anybody, he doesn't take it unless they're already like half dead and he already half knocked them out. That's the only way Holland will accept these subs, okay? So he had opportunities, and instead, what did he do? Posture up for ground and pound, lose his position. Bonehead. Is Ian Gary going to do that? I think if he has to, he'll lay on top of him, chest to chest, pass the guard slowly, be annoying. Everybody will be booing it, and then he'll submit him. I could really see that happening. So for me, I like Ian Gary. I think he wins the fight. I think he's going to finish Michael Page. I think he could kick him in the head as well. I think people are underrating his ability to knock out a 37-year-old man. I do think Michael Page is hard to hit, but if he gets hit in this fight, Ian Gary hits hard. Ian Gary throws head kicks. Ian Gary sent Daniel Rodriguez, who just took 100 significant strikes from Kelvin Gastelum at 185, no problem, to the shadow realm almost instantly. So I just think that he doesn't get any credit for his wins. He doesn't get any credit for his skills. And maybe he loses this fight because it's a tough one. But I think he's a deserved favorite. I think he's going to win the fight, and I think he's going to finish MVP. And by the way, I picked MVP split decision last time. So it's not like I'm an MVP hater. I said, like, he'll win this fight against Kevin because Kevin's an idiot. But I think Ian Gary's a smart guy.
Yeah, I hate the UFC for making this fight because I wanted to fade both of these guys down the line. Ian Gary, obviously, everybody's been wanting to fade him. But MVP, Jesus Christ, this dude's been a fade basically his entire career. I've been following him since literally the start of his MMA career. I saw his very first MMA fight where he landed the tornado kick knockout on a forearm way back in the day, and I followed his career literally ever since then. This is the man's entire career. I will explain it to you, and this is what's going to happen in the UFC, and it's already starting to happen. He goes out there, he talks this giant game about how he's most, hot shit, amazing fighter ever, basically. Whatever promotion he's in, backs that up and also agrees he's the most hot shit, amazing fighter ever. He goes out there, faces the worst fighters in that promotion, garbage men and janitors and people who are not even full-time fighters. He basically has no offense outside of one random flashy strike. It'll literally be just minutes of him doing nothing. Oh, flying knee, he randomly won because the guy literally just stood there and ate it. Or, oh, he did nothing and then kicked a guy in the leg and shattered his kneecap. But he's not out there talking about consistently winning rounds or minute to minute, talking about a guy like Brian Ortega being bad at it. MVP's terrible at it. He just stands there and does nothing. The thing is, though, he stands so far away from his opponent that they can do nothing as well. And so every fight of his is basically what we saw with Kevin Holland, standing at space, doing nothing for minutes on end with the occasional dart in for one strike at a time. And then he wins a split decision or a close decision or a unanimous one that wasn't particularly action-packed. It was actually quite dull and quite boring. But then the hype train just keeps chugging along somehow. And then he eventually faces an actual decent opponent like Diego Lima in Bellator, bet against him there. He got his ass knocked out, got wrestled by Logan Storley, got beat by Mike Perry in bare knuckle boxing. So, I mean, that's his, world there, straight up striking. Couldn't even win that. So it's just like, this is the man's career, going out there against guys like Kevin Holland, who will just play right into his game, who have no real threat to him. And the man still can't go out there and put on super dominant performances. It's either a lackluster decision like that, or a flashy KO after doing basically nothing. Again, this is this man's entire career. I followed it. I'm not a hater. I'm just giving you the objective analysis. Go back and watch it and prove me wrong. We saw in his first fight against Holland again. I don't know what was impressive about that. He went out there and landed like 5 strikes over 15 minutes, didn't really do anything else, won a decision. Okay. You're telling me this dude at almost 40 years old is going to be a champion when we've already seen him lose, being the same fighter he is now to lesser fighters. So I'm expecting the same old MVP. I think he's going to go out there, basically try to make this the most boring fight humanly possible, as he always does against anyone remotely decent. It's worth noting he did eventually actually win the Diego Lee match by controversial split decision by, again, turning the fight into a complete nothingness pit of just absolute void of entertainment or action. So I expect that's what he's going to do here. Ian will try to march him down, try to land a bit more volume, and I'm expecting a super close decision here if one of them doesn't happen to knock the other out. It's worth noting, Ian Gary, we've seen him get dropped by lesser fighters. We've seen MVP get dropped and knocked out before. You mentioned the leg kick issue with MVP. Actually, that's how Diego knocked him out. He hit him with a leg kick, dropped him, then knocked him out with a weird shovel uppercut while he was trying to get back to his feet. So I think there's a variety of ways that both of them could get knocked out, but I kind of leaning more towards a close decision because I think, again, MVP is going to intentionally try to make this the most boring fight humanly possible, land like 5 good, clean strikes, and win a split decision based on that. So depends if Ian Gary can try to make more of a fight out of that, and maybe he gets overzealous trying to make that happen and gets himself knocked out. I don't know, but I feel like this fight could either be very good with a quick knockout or one of the absolute worst fights you've ever seen. So ultimately, I will go with Ian Gary, but man, I'm expecting a wonky split decision here, if any history from MVP is any indication. As for the prelims, anything else you want to add about those, Liam?
I don't have a tremendous amount for the prelims. I would just say I'm going to have some bets on the prelims. I think there's some prop opportunities, especially, some money lines that I'm looking at as well. I always like to try and get off the most common fights on the board and that kind of thing. But I basically think there's live underdogs on the card, and on all the pay-per-views this year so far, that hasn't been the case. But, I don't stop believing, baby. And I think that there's just a lot of matchups that I could see going, very close that are lined a little bit wider than I expected. So for me, those are fights where I'm probably going to look to target the dog in the prelims.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a lot of bets for this card. We already have. I'm looking right now at the bet page. We have, I'll show you a little preview. These are all of the bets we have. So that's up just so far. We'll probably have, I don't know, maybe like a dozen added more tomorrow. There's already maybe like a couple dozen more than that. Again, we don't just have UFC bets. There's UFC, PFL, Invicta, ACA. So variety of different things to bet on over there. Again, there's going to be a break coming up from the UFC in July, a couple weeks off, but we will still have probably like 10 MMA events we'll be betting in that span. So again, premium service, yes, it does have a cost, but as long as you're betting at least $5 a unit, you will make back that cost. Up over 60 units on the year, well over 300 units long term, and all third-party tracked and verified. So we're not fudging those results or faking lines or anything like that. Also worth noting, we don't pad our records with the units either. Most bets are like half unit, 1 unit. Sometimes we'll have a couple unit bet, but we're not going out there putting 10 unit bets all the time. 5 unit bets is a max bet. That is ultra rare. We barely ever have them. So when we say we're up 61 units, it's actually 61 units. It's not, like 6 units if everyone's just blindly betting 10 for every play. So check those out if you have not already. The link's there on the screen, patreon.com/FuriesFightPicks. Other than that, I will be back to do a breakdown show after the event, the after show analysis. That'll be exclusive to Patreon. Hopefully you join me for there. Of course, there's those bets, also other content, fight film. We'll have quick picks articles, staff picks. There's the cheat sheets done by Liam. He has a bunch of stats, trends, comparisons. So check it all again, patreon.com/FuriesFightPicks. Other than that, hope you guys have a great weekend. Good luck on all of your bets. For Liam, I'm Luca Fury, and thank you for watching.